The Titan's Eagle came about largely from an excruciating amount of pain. Because about 2 years ago I contracted a kidney stone. Which again, a word you hear and you think kidney stone, simple ailment. It's like, no. When you're experiencing it, it's unbearable. There's this nasty little rock that's working its way through your system, shredding everything. It's just horrible pain. And you can't do anything. It's not like a pulse. It's on. Had a paramedic come out and said, this is a problem. And I think they said very calmly to my wife, if we don't do something about this right now, we're probably going to lose him. Like, what? And you hear that in a medicated state and think, what? And so for me, I just try and think of a story out of it. And what came out of it was the Titan's Eagle.
Right.
I'm recording now.
Okay. Roll cameras. Cameras rolling.
Audio's rolling.
Okay, mark it, please.
Take one.
Well, of course, this has to be set in the 1600s. But the point of this story, I think it was because it's stylistically helped. Because we've got so many technological advancements that help us with immediacy. So if you have a problem, I've got a bit of a weird sweat going on, I feel quite dizzy, Google, problem solved. And I wanted to create something whereby it was have a slight air of mysticism to it, and it was a crossover of what science would become, a little air of magic to it, a bit of spiritualism as well, and sort of supernatural. Because this is the thing as well. I love the idea that we sort of pitch this as a period science fiction film, and that's something you don't really ever see. It's always science fiction, the future. It's like, no, not really. Planet of the Apes feels like the past until you realise it is the future. Spoilers. But if you take someone from their usual, in this case the audience, at their usual setting, put them somewhere else, immediately they question everything.
One of the things that really interested me about working on the film was the fact that it presented a really interesting challenge, because a lot of the short film work that I've done in the past, both with Matt and other directors, and also sort of a lot of the work that I do in sort of with my production company, it's all been fairly modern, set. Obviously I do like to shoot in a fairly moody style, quite dark, but I've never had to shoot a period film before, and it presents a huge number of challenges, sort of trying to get that sort of period look, which is often sort of a bit like kind of Rembrandt paintings basically, which often have very high key to fill ratios, so very high contrast. So one side of the face will be lit quite a lot, and then there'll be quite a lot of dark, a lot of shadow, which obviously is what happens when you have sort of lots of small hard lights like candles and stuff like that.
It was good. Matt had some clear ideas about what he needed, and because the characters were all connected with alchemy, they obviously had colours and themes connected with them, so we worked from that and moved on. That was nice to have a definite framework to work within, which was very helpful. As with any sort of period that you know well, there's little elements that appear in clothing that you always feel apply to a certain character, so I drew them in for certain characters.
I play Langford. I'm the unfortunate soul that gets stuck in a time loop, seemingly for eternity. I'm very much in that mindset of learn the lines, get it done, and then turn up and be professional. And then the character's story in my mind flowed very easily. It followed a rhythm. Langford wakes up, he's in a field, he meets Ponty. He wakes up in a field, he goes to see Ponty again. But in reality, when you're filming something like this, it's very stop and start, and you're filming the same few seconds over and over and over again before suddenly you're filming the next time loop after you've woken up in the field again 10 minutes later. So you've got to have another layer of makeup put on, and that's all you get before you go on, and your stop-start of it all felt very made me feel quite uncomfortable as an actor. I didn't get into the flow at any point. I didn't have time to do it, and everyone else is working to a schedule. The camera being in my face, not so much. I quite enjoyed it by the end of it. I almost learned to play with it. As much as when I'm on stage, you feel the audience in the palm of your hand almost, and you can manipulate them. It kind of felt the same with the camera. It made me very aware of what my face was doing, and at times I was worried that it wouldn't be good enough. And one thing that really made me feel very anxious actually was that Matthew would never let me see the take on the camera. He wouldn't let me watch it back so I could judge my own performance. He wouldn't have any of that, so that made me feel very uncomfortable indeed.
Chris, who is used to doing a play, learning the whole thing, getting into a rhythm, start to finish, getting into a mindset, living the character. No problem at all. Except that's not how film works. Film says, right, Chris needed one line again, and he has to stop, get back in that moment he was in previously, and then get back into it. Again, I could have got more of a film-based actor, but I wanted a theatre actor because I thought he can get that emotionality and that level faster. And it's better to get someone and bring them down than having to constantly pump someone up to that level, that theatricality, that Shakespearean mindset to help with the time period. And then you have Ben, who again, as I say, improv comedian, he's very funny, but he does funny stuff and he makes up on the fly kind of thing. And you say, that person, I need you to do a very serious, concerned performance and do the same thing over and over and over and don't change it. So take them very much out of their element.
I play Pontefract, and I am the lovely assistant to Langford. Basically, I'm basically his Alfred to his Batman. First of all, there was a lot of lines, obviously, with the sort of the way that the dialogue is spoken and everything. It kind of, yeah, I did get quite worried. Because, like I said, I've only done a bit of acting here and there, but I mainly do improv comedy and stuff like that. So it's all stuff that just it's all stuff that just happens in the moment, you know. And then here's this role where you're playing a character that's not in the time loop, but he's part of that time loop, you know. So I'm going through like repeated motions. But yeah, I was between takes and between scenes. I would be like looking at the script all the time because I was quite wary about the fact that the lines were important. Not that they're not important anyway in other things, but just the fact that they were so important that I got them exactly right. I've worn sort of period type stuff before in plays and stuff, so it wasn't such an odd experience, but yeah, a bit different.
He would be perhaps bewildered. So I chose for him a very practical garment that was a very authentic choice and would have been worn a lot more than you see in films because people don't tend to wear outdoor travelling clothes in indoor scenes, obviously. But I thought we can carry this over for him because he's because of the way the script worked and the structure of the story. He's always arriving, so he has this cassack, which is a great big button travelling cloak, but it made him slightly bear-like as well, which was, you always think of bears as slightly bumbling and bewildered, so it worked all rather well.
The hat was a bit much because obviously I had situations where we had the candle right up to my face, and we had to make sure we weren't burning the hat because obviously it's so long over my face.
Where possible, we also really tried to lean on actually using real candlelight. So there was a few places in particular when Ben Allen's character sort of is holding a real candle. I was very keen to try and get that as close to his face as possible to kind of provide him with a really natural, really lovely looking key light without him burning himself or anything else around him, which was sometimes difficult. There was many times where I was going, Ben, get the candle close to your face. And it's like, it's burning me. Yeah, sorry about that, Ben, but it does look really good. I think you look great. I hope you agree.
It's kind of like a jigsaw. I mean, you know, ideally you would have endless time, and you probably wouldn't be able to do it. The art really is having what you have and having the finished product that you need to achieve, and then rearranging the jigsaw pieces so that eventually it kind of moves towards that and becomes that. And you can do it, but you have to sort of cut corners and know where you can cut corners. Things are achievable, but things aren't ever going to be completely perfect, because you'd want everything being made by hand, and then you'd go back another stage and go, well, let's have the fabrics woven by hand, and let's have the yarn dyed by hand, and let's have some authentic sheep that are only spoken to in 17th century language before we've even taken their wool. And you don't need to do that. You can cut certain corners and get a good result, hopefully a good result. It was cold and occasionally damp. That's always an issue, so that things, it's normal film costume maintenance, making sure everything stays at the same state if it needs to, or progresses if it needs to, making sure the actors don't freeze.
My goodness, it was cold, and if it weren't for Harriet and her magical foot warmer things that she'd stuffed into every pocket and orifice in my costume and ran over with a blanket to comfort me and a cup of tea after every shoot, I think I'd have had a lot of trouble.
There's a suit in the V&A that I've always loved, which is a very rough, springy wool, and it's always given me a certain feeling about how the person would have been who wore it, and I immediately thought of that suit when I thought of him when I read the script. So that was great, because I managed to find some black wool that was very like it, and he had quite a springy sort of, this one, in fact, here it is, the lovely suit.
In terms of audio, I feel like it can always be quite challenging, especially when we're doing exterior shoots, to actually make sure that we get, not too much interference from outside. And on one of the days we were filming in the field, there was a lot of gunshots and dogs barking, and that was quite interesting to work around. But we got through it, and also as well, in the workshop scenes, it's in quite a really sort of cave-like environment, so you're always very conscious to make sure that there's not too much echoiness going on. So I think that was an interesting challenge.
We are filming in the workshop in Janet's Bar. Bloody amazing location, really cool. It needs so little set dressing as far as it's concerned, and it's just a really nice bar, because again, Norwich has these buildings that just are repurposed. It's wonderful. They're very accommodating. The props and all the bits and pieces around took a long time to get in place, because they were borrowed. Well, we had some of them, but most of them were borrowed from James Milne's antiques shop in Norwich. It's P. Milne's Antiques and Curio shop. And he loaned us amazing stuff, but again, they are loaned because they are, they're being sold. They on behalf of some people, but they were really amazing pieces and really strange stuff. And we had a actual human skeleton. A very strange, and I maintained I was the only one touching it. No one goes near this stuff, because I want to be make sure that no one's held responsible, liable. Nothing would happen to it.
Hi, I'm Langford. Welcome to my workshop. I'm going to show you around. Let's go through my keyhole. Alright, over here, this is where I do my best work. You won't believe the magic that gets created in here. It's lovely. All sorts of shit with tags on that doesn't make any sense. Everybody wants fashionable bags. We've got a nice Neely and Blanchard bag over here. A good table full of stuff. It's all here for aesthetics. I don't do anything with this at all. This little fella here, this is actually Pontefract's brother, Chesterfield. He used to work for us, actually, and then last year we were sort of working on something to make us more attractive to the opposite sex, and before we knew it, his head came off. It was really awkward. Pontefract doesn't know. I told him he got a boat to the New World, and I think he sees some comfort in that. And but it makes a nice centerpiece on the table in the meantime. Let's go over here. Leslie, our bird. She seems to keep getting stronger, and then this morning just exploded out of the cage. My theory is that as I get weaker, the bird gets stronger. We're both in the time loop together, and it'd be nice to sort of get her back and eat her heart so I can take her strength. But if not, don't worry. She could be a superhero. Not necessarily the one that we want, but the one that we need. And finally, this is my desk over here, where I do some of my most profound thinking. Well, that and the toilet. Here's some stones that we made earlier. For all sorts of different things, really. This turns your hair grey. I don't know why we've got that, but it might come in handy. This one is an alternative to Viagra. Ooh, I shouldn't have picked that up. Right, and I just sit here and do my stuff and try and bring my dead wife back to life. And it's cosy. Costs a lot to heat, but it's home.
Being producer, sort of being the go-between between the actors and sometimes Matt, having to sort of translate what he means sometimes, not in a bad way, because he's a good director. He knows what he wants and he will always get the performance he needs. He's very tactful and he's very good with all of the cast as well. But sometimes I feel like he will rile them on purpose to get the sort of effect he wants, and so a lot of the time I'd be stepping in and be like, just so you know, he's just doing this for this reason. He's just trying to make sure he gets the role out. Just go with it. And sort of being a lot of that mediator, as it were.
I am a very naughty man. That's it. No. So, oh God, hang on. I always forget if I'm Stavely or the other one. I was Stavely. I was very much Stavely. If somebody says to you, who was Stavely? who is half of the double act, Ilford and Staveley, who sound like professional wrestlers, but actually are very naughty men. They're northerners, and they are criminals, and they are attempting to do bad things. And my goodness, they're a pair. They're wearing their money on their sleeve, shall we say. They have the most ostentatious clothing imaginable, and a really quite beautiful wig, which I still wear at weekends sometimes.
Staveley and Ilford, they appealed to me as sort of gangsters. So because it was in England, I was basing them in my head slightly on the craze, slightly on gangsters in a more American sense, the very sort of dressing up, high fashion, over the top, wearing too much. I very, very nearly put them in 17th century sunglasses and was so tempted, but couldn't do it in the end.
I kind of had all the lines in my head, fortunately, because as you say, they're quite specific in the language used, so that was good. But it was the order of them. I kept getting the order of it. I found that very difficult. We got there in the end, but yeah, remembering the order of the specific take was the difficulty for me.
So I played Aspatria, who is married to the character that Christopher Neal played, and she is deceased. Aspatria is trying to communicate with him through the medium of dreams and visions to try to help him through his purpose and find his journey and path. And then I looked at the script and realised I didn't understand a lot of the words, but I met up with Matt and Christopher Neal, and he explained everything and sort of talked us through the whole process, through to his first thought of the story, right through to writing the final version of the script. So I did eventually read the script, and then obviously I had to Google a lot of the words, and hopefully I've got a larger vocabulary because of it, really. So Matt told me in advance, when we had one of our first read-throughs, asked Chris to leave the room and told everyone what was going to be happening right at the end. Yeah, it was an interesting day of filming. Very, very cold, very demanding, and I think it probably took about 4 times longer to do the setup than it did to actually film the 30-second scene that it was. The makeup took, I think, between 3 and 4 hours, and involved everything from normal makeup, foundation, eyeliner, through to cornflakes and a face mask, one of those peeling face masks, and a lot of glue, a lot of facial glue, which was really quite odd to have on my face for quite a few hours.
The makeup was a very, very large part of what we were doing, for predominantly 2 reasons. First off, we had the fact that Langford starts out just a very normal guy. The makeup wasn't just non-existent at that point, and he has to become more skeletal, more broken down as the film goes on. And of course, removing flesh from someone's face is very, very difficult, but with the right shadow work and the right contouring with makeup, it's an exceptionally simple trick, arguably. And Misha, our makeup artist, did a fantastic job. We did a lot of tests beforehand in the run-up to the actual film, but blotting out around Chris's nose and the sort of temples of his head, little like almost like blood vessels and veins coming out, making him look more ill. And then eventually get into this really, really awful state. And on top of that, we also had the excruciating process of putting the makeup onto Moira for the post-credit sequence where Aspatria comes back from the dead. A little bit wrong. Something's not right. Predominantly she's all there. Mostly she's intact, but something is just completely off, and it's just a failed experiment, largely. But it was a very, very long and very difficult process. It takes a lot of patience, both in terms of the artist in the chair, as it were, and also the makeup artist putting things on the face, and just tweaking and touching as we go along in the field when we're actually doing the shoot, just spraying with blood at the last minute, all that kind of stuff. And Misha was great in that regard because we all sort of flag and wane, and at some point you get sort of a bit low, you're like tired and hungry, and like, okay, don't worry, Tim, come on, pep up, we can do this. Not Misha. Misha's always upbeat, always happy, always giddy. She was like the film mascot in a way. So when she was applying the makeup beforehand and in between takes, and then just turning to everyone saying, I love it, I'm having the best time.
Matthew asked me to provide the music score for it, so I had to wait until I'd had a chat with Matthew about what he wanted, and then didn't do anything about what he said whatsoever. And with this, really, we'd originally decided on Titan's Eagle it was going to be far more minimalist. We were going to do probably one or two instruments maybe at the most was our first thought. But because it seems very English when you look at it, I felt that it needed a string sound, definitely something we'd associate with English. But it was also very mystical, so I had a chat with Matthew again about introducing some sounds that would symbolise that kind of mysticism, sort of some Far Eastern small drums maybe, or a Zamalan, or various things we could think of that would just add to the English string sound. We talked a lot about how we were going to do, certainly the opening of the film, how we were going to do the field and the laying and the waking up. So I think the first thing we put together was the actual swoosh sound of when Langford sits up in the field, and a heavy bass drone underneath. So you knew something was about to happen, and we bring that in every time the field appears. I think Matthew didn't want to signpost really what was going to happen in the film too early on, so it was fairly upbeat. The title music at the beginning was his motion music, his moving music, was quite upbeat, and then as the film went on and as Langford declined, so we distorted the music, and the same theme but we twisted it a bit, so it just felt uncomfortable. The actor playing the drunk sang, and we didn't want to stop the music before it got to his point and start up afterwards, so the only solution really was to incorporate his song into the score somehow. So I had to listen to what he sang, work out how to make that into a song, and he didn't sing in time. Don't show him this. He didn't sing in time either. So we had to try and make the orchestral music fit with his song, and then that happened 2 or 3 times as well. So yeah, that was a difficult one to get around.
Oh, my friend, Stephen Linkworth.
So I put the flute in, but the flute actually doesn't sound anywhere near loud enough. In fact, the flute sounds completely buried. The flute's not really doing much, and by the time you bring the percussion in and all the other instruments in, you would imagine that the flute would be now completely buried. But it's the opposite. All I've done now is switched on the percussion and switched on all the more ethnic sounding instruments, and you actually hear the flute clearer than you could hear it when they weren't there. But it's there. It's a strange acoustic thing where it just pushes the instruments around in the sound you're hearing, which I love. I think it's fascinating. I love doing all that.
This is my first solo project that I've crowdfunded, and I hate the process. I hate it. I hate the process. I really do. It was a very successful campaign. It was very well run. Everyone was very helpful with it. We got some interesting tweets from some famous people, and we got it on the campaign on the radio and such, and all shared bits and pieces, and really nice exposure for it.
On the show now, a short film by Norwich-based company Cheesemint Productions. You'll find out why they're called Cheesemint in just a moment, even though they don't want to tell us. The story follows. I love the storyline. A 17th century alchemist who gets caught in a time loop that begins to drain his life force. Apparently we've got to think of a non-comedy Shakespearean version of Groundhog Day. It's called The Titan's Eagle, and they're raising funds to get the project started. And writer and director of the film, Matthew Stogdon, is in the studio with lead actor. Nice to have Christopher Neal back here. How are you both?
Hello. Hello. Very well, thank you very much.
This sounds a bit of an unusual one.
Money was really not the factor, I think, that motivated a lot of people. I think it was more, hopefully, the project, because at the end of the day, people did not get paid even a fraction of what they were A, entitled to, or B, what their artistic talent merits at the end of the day. But that's again the nature of a project like this. There's no money coming in for it other than the Kickstarter and my own stuff I was funding in. It's not to make money, it's to make a final product, it's to make a finished film and such. I think people are well aware of that, and if they like the idea, they latch onto it, which makes life a lot easier. For this level of filmmaking, it gives us such a freedom to progress without that overbearing arrogance and interference. But it also means you are completely without a safety net. You are without support. You are without the guidelines. So it makes you much more hungry and much more lean and much more inventive. That's one thing I think that's lost on films of a certain scale, when they say things like, oh, we'll just fix it in post. Oh, we'll just fix it with some CGI. We'll fix this. No, we won't. If you don't get it in camera on the day, chances are you're not going to get it. So you have to. You have to be inventive. You have to be creative. Second thing is the environment. The atmosphere of us all pulling together, doing what we can, taking these very short breaks, eating some sandwiches that I've made the night before. It feels like something we're all a part of. It's not just, oh, I'm turning up for 5 minutes, I'm doing my bit, and you know what? No, if it runs over half an hour, I'm not having that. I'm not having that. Because I've seen that quite a lot on professional shoots, and it's like, what are you doing? This is filmmaking. This is what I love. I would do this for free if I could. But most of the time I do.
What excites me about what we've been able to achieve with this film is that obviously there's a big mix of different skill levels and different levels of experience within the industry, but it's kind of what's exciting about filmmaking at the moment. The technology has evolved both in quality but also in cost. We can create something that is actually, very, very high quality technically, for a very, very low cost, arguably. And also it means that, ideas like Matt's would have been impossible to pull off at the quality that we've done for the budget that we've done a few years ago.
I think, really, as with anything, when it's smaller, it makes the whole group more close-knit. And I think everybody is aware of what needs to be done. And so you're all more conscious you need to get things done. But because you're such a small team, you bond a lot more. And there was a lot of bonding on set for that reason.
I like the emphasis on creativity. Definitely. Smaller projects are always more intense in that way because there isn't a finance department that's looking over your shoulder. There's not many of you. You all team together much better. You work with each other, and I like that. I like that. It's much better. It's more fun.
There was never a time when you felt like you were in it alone, or not everybody was in it together. We didn't finish a take and then people wandered off to their dressing rooms or went for a cup of tea or something. For every take, for every moment that we were rehearsing and planning, everyone was in very close proximity. Everyone was having an input.
It is quite relaxed, but at the same time we still have an agenda and we still need to get this done. But it doesn't feel like anyone's put any pressure on anyone.
It's you're tighter, it's closer, it's slightly more fun. You tend to get a bit more out of it.
I mean, I've been pretty lucky in some of the things I've had to work on, but I actually really experience more joy and professionalism with this than most other things I've done in the last goodness knows how many years.
Why is art important? At the end of the day, to me, art is the only thing that matters, and it's the only thing that endures. You can talk about legacies, you can talk about families and bloodlines and history and all that shit. Yeah, fine. Art is the only thing really that kind of transcends all that stuff.
There's nothing else in life, is there? It's the stuff of life. It is the stuff of life. It's because otherwise, what would there be? Oh my God, we'd all be going around in like in the Chinese Cultural Revolution in the same little suit and not doing anything different. And
in the moments where like everything's slowed down and you can just like have this way of escaping your life. Not that I'm saying you've probably got a terrible life or anything like that, but it's just a way of just like experiencing someone else's life or experiencing like a piece of history or just that sort of stuff. So I would say it's incredibly important because of that. I would say because of the escapism, because at the end of the day, if you didn't have like certain art, like a painting or anything that tells a story or anything, then what do you have?
Personally speaking, it just is about kind of scratching that itch that you have to do something. I think no one who is creative or an artist, no one would do it if they just did it just for financial benefit or to I mean, some people do it for the fame. I don't know. Personally, I do it because for me, I'm one of my most happiest times is when I'm on set and I'm solving, in the flow of solving a problem and usually a lighting problem or a framing problem or something, and for me that's my absolute favorite thing to do is to go and do a recce, a location recce, and take a look at a location or a situation and be inspired and kind of have a picture form in my head of what that could be, all the infinite possibilities of what that could be, and then later be there in that moment and have that kind of good stress and good pressure of, okay, you kind of got a plan, let's see if you can make it work.
Art for me is a cathartic thing. It's necessary for me to deal with everything in life. It's always sort of been the sort of thing that I've always held in high regard. Even from when I was a child, I would always, even though I'd enjoy the sciencey subjects, I would always be leaning towards the more arts-based things because I felt that they're really necessary. I don't understand people that can not be interested in art or music or film, or I'm always like baffled by those people that are like, oh, I don't really like music, I don't really listen to music, and I find that strange. So whoever those people are, maybe they've got some other form of art I don't know about, but I feel like it's part of the sort of human experience. And from the earliest civilizations, there's always been art, whether it's like a crude cave painting on the wall or like little like stick models. There's always been art, and I feel like that humans need it, we need it.
What do you do after you go home? You watch television, you watch a film, maybe you'll go and watch a play, maybe you'll read a book. It's important that people make this stuff. People need the distraction, but also people really emotionally connect with something. Even if you got somebody who don't really read books and I don't really like films, there's a television series they love, whether it just makes them laugh or there's some way they connect with the characters. It is a way to bring you out of yourself. It is a way to distract you from the bad things in life. It's a way to feel better emotionally. We all need entertainment, and we need people who make it well.
I think all arts are incredibly important. Sadly, our government doesn't. Children at school aren't having access to learning music quite as much as they used to. I mean, in Norfolk, actually, the music service they have here is working very hard. But the government itself doesn't seem to think that the art side of things is very important. I think it's part of what we are. You sit a baby in front of a TV that's playing a drum rhythm and it will start to jive and move about. There's something built in us about it.
And there's so many different perspectives on the world outside of just me, Moira. There's so many different views out there that every time I do a new play, a new film, I'm learning more about the world around me and in the past. And I think that's sort of helping me become a a more worldly known person, I'm learning everything around me as much as I can, and I feed off the knowledge and information that I'm gathering from each different show. It's so different, every single one.
Art is an opportunity to learn about a lot about yourself, but it's also an opportunity to tell the world about what you think, and also to explore. And I'm using art here as kind of a shorthand, really, just for film, really, because obviously to cover the whole kind of pantheon of different artistic sort of endeavours would be impossible. But you can hopefully change someone's mind and make someone think and create meaning which is greater than the sum of its parts, and hopefully touch someone's life.
You can't dismiss art. It is everywhere. We're not living in caves anymore. We're not just part of the natural world. We've created our world around us, and it is man-made. The images around us are man-made. The way towns are laid out is man-made. So everything is an extension of our artistic sensibilities. And so when you take a high form of art like film or painting, music, the way that it is sculptured is really important.
There's something about taking on another person's soul, about feeling another person's emotions that I can't put my fingers on. I can feel a sadness in real life, and it would bring me to tears. It would be heart-wrenching. It would break me down. I can imagine that pain. I can feel that pain. But then when I'm feeling that pain as a character, it's entirely different. It's unique. And as tough as that can be, it's thrilling. It's exciting. There's something about it that just makes me tingle, my blood rush. It's becoming someone else, feeling that life for them, and you almost feel a responsibility to that character to do it well, to do it properly, and to take it seriously, because there's so much that can be said for the human spirit and the soul and everybody's individuality. We all experience pain, we all experience joy, grief, love, and tragedy, but one life is too short to make the most of it. So to experience those different emotions from so many different angles is something that I love, and I will hold on to every one of them forever.
But on top of that, it's also the only way I can process anything in my life. So case in point, this came out of me having a kidney stone. I would have buried this. I would have just become this, what most people actually do. You try and, I've had a horrible experience. How do I get through this? How do I, give myself cathartic closure? One of my main things, a feature I've found in my films, I don't intentionally put in there, but I finds its way in there because of my own history and my own person, is films where people don't listen. Because I always maintain that nobody listens. Nobody hears anything. They will either A, wait to talk, or B, they just register and go, yep, okay, now I'm going to give my side of things. And people don't actually genuinely listen. So there's a problem with someone. If there's a problem with themselves, if they don't listen to their own body telling you you've got a kidney stone, they don't listen to you when you're saying I'm in trouble. They don't listen to people around you telling you the exact thing you need to hear at the exact moment you need to hear it, because you can't hear it. So every film I've ever done has been about a character who isn't listening. And for that reason, it's the most important message I can hand to people, of listen to this. And again, that's why I have the sort of twist at the end of the film, of the audience. You think he's talking to God. He's not talking to you. He's talking to you, and you're not listening. You could help by stopping the film. You could literally stop his pain. You control that, but you let it go on. And that's, to me, the most important thing, because it allows me to create a situation where I can explain how I feel and how I am and who I am without actually ever meeting you.